All right, it's 2 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. So today I just plan to cover kind of the basic information about EBS licenses, provide a little background on our auction process and what to expect, after the first bids are received, and I'll also have a live demonstration of exactly how to value the licenses, how to work our site, and how to submit bids, and just kind of our whole process. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box. If they're relevant to the current topic, I will answer them during the presentation. If not, I may wait and answer the question at the end. I'd also like to point out that there are 2 files I included as handouts in the webinar that I'll be discussing later. They're available on our website as well, but you can download them from here if you want. So we'll go ahead and get started with basic information about the EBS licenses. So this is what the band plan looks like. It's a total of 194 megahertz, starting out at 2496, all the way up to 2690. What you'll notice about the band is it's actually split into 2 different unique categories. The first is EBS, or Educational Broadband Service. The EBS licenses make up about 5/8 of the band and can only be held by educational institutions or some nonprofits, but primarily they're held by accredited schools. That's the vast majority of the license holders. The other category of this band is BRS, or Broadband Radio Service. BRS licenses can actually be held by anyone, including commercial entities. Most of these licenses are actually held by Sprint, though, but there's some that Sprint does not hold. We'll actually have both EBS and BRS licenses available in the auction, but the bulk of the licenses that we have will actually be the EBS licenses. So a typical license is 4 channels, or 22.5 megahertz. So if you take, for example, the A channel block, you'll see A1, A2, and A3 are all down here in the lower band and are 5.5 megahertz each, for a total of 16.5 megahertz. The other portion of the license, the A4, is in the middle band, and that's 6 megahertz, so that gives us the total of the 22.5. Some licenses are less than 22.5 megahertz, and far fewer are actually going to be more. But the standard license is 22.5 megahertz. It is actually possible in some areas to lease multiple licenses covering the same geographic area. So, for example, you could lease A1, 2, and 3, B1, 2, and 3, and of course A4 and B4 as well, and that would give you 33 megahertz of contiguous spectrum in the lower band, and then 12 megahertz of contiguous spectrum in the middle band as well. That's not available everywhere, but it is available in some places. So that's what the licenses look like from a spectral point of view. This is what they actually look like geographically. So the standard license is a circle with a 35-mile radius. But if you look at the blue circle on your screen, you'll see the GSA of this particular license. And if you take a closer look at the southwest corner, you'll see that it's not a complete circle. There's a portion of the circle missing. And that's basically because it bumps up against another license on the same frequency. So they're not all going to be complete circles, but the standard license is going to be a circle with a 35-mile radius. So while some sections of the licenses may actually touch each other, there are actually parts of the country that are not covered by EBS licenses. It's actually about half the U.S. geographically. It's typically in the center of the country. The coasts are typically covered, but there's actually been a push to expand coverage to the entire U.S. The area shown in red is actually not currently licensed, and this is actually how this particular license would expand under the consensus proposal that's been in front of the FCC for a number of years. And that proposal basically states that if the license touches a portion of a county, it'll expand to cover the entire county unless it runs into another license's expansion. In places where there are no licenses, new applications would be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis. And if this is approved, the licenses would actually be issued by county as opposed to the circle with a 35-mile radius. And that's makes it easier for the FCC. That's how a lot of their licenses are done now. So it's just a more practical solution. And I actually hosted a separate webinar on this on the issue and the possibility of getting the FCC to issue new licenses last week. If anyone has any additional questions about that project, feel free to contact me after this is over or watch the webinar on our website, which I can provide a link to later as well. So now I want to spend a little bit of time just kind of going over the pros and cons of the EBS licenses. The main advantage is obviously going to be freedom from interference. They also have higher power levels and the ability to provide non-line of sight service, which should result in lower operating costs, higher speeds, and ideally more satisfied customers, which means more revenue for the operators as well. The standard equipment is LT and WiMAX, and we've actually seen the cost of the equipment decreasing over the years, making it more affordable for more and more operators to actually obtain 2.5 gigahertz rights. We're doing a little research last week and found that actually 60 separate companies are leasing 2.5 licenses as of now. So, that's obviously been increasing over the years. Let's see. There's also what we call built-in financing. What I mean by that is that the FCC says EBS licenses can't be sold to commercial operators. Instead, they have to be leased. And a lease payment structure might include something like 10% up front and the other 90% paid out over the 30-year lease. So that's essentially what I mean by built-in finance. We don't have to pay for it all up front. I think that's probably going to be advantageous to a lot of commercial operators, particularly the smaller ones that might have a high cost of capital or problem borrowing all the money up front. Let's see. As of now, there's not been any competition from AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile with regards to the EBS licenses. The only real major carrier that leases these licenses is Sprint, and I'm sure everyone is aware that they have the vast majority of these licenses or leases. So there's obviously some disadvantages to EBS licenses as well. There's a cost associated with buying or leasing the licenses. Equipment is more expensive than unlicensed equipment, but like I said just a second ago, that the cost of equipment is actually getting closer and closer. The gap is narrowing between the licensed and unlicensed equipment. Most licenses are only the standard 22.5 megahertz. Some operators may want multiple licenses for optimal efficiency. The biggest disadvantage is the licenses aren't available everywhere. Like I said, it's about half the U.S. geographically that does not have that's left uncovered by EBS licenses. There's also the problem of when dealing with educational institutions, the lease negotiations typically can move pretty slow. The schools almost always need some kind of board approval, and it may take multiple months in order to get approval. What I found is actually a lot of the schools that have the licenses may not even be aware that they have it. So it takes a little bit of education on our end to just say, hey, you have this asset, this is what it is. People are interested in leasing it. Here are your options. So it can take a little bit of time sometimes to get these deals done. Some go very quickly. Some, take some time to get done. But so that is obviously one of the disadvantages. So now I'd actually like to spend just a very brief amount of time discussing some of the requirements that the FCC has in order to ensure the license and lease remain in good standing with the FCC. So perhaps the biggest thing is that the FCC requires that part of the license, specifically 5%, is reserved for educational purposes. And this is most commonly accomplished by giving the license holder a certain number of free accounts or credits or devices that can be used on the network for free that they can distribute to faculty or students or used at the school. So that's typically how that's accomplished as far as reserving that 5%. Let's see, also the maximum duration for any lease signed today is 30 years. But any lease signed prior to January 10th, 2005 has a maximum term of 15 years. And so if the lease was signed in 2003, it would expire in 2018 regardless of what the actual lease says. So now that we've gone over kind of the background information about EBS licenses, I'd like to spend some time talking about the auction process and what to expect after the first bid date. And I think I should clarify, it's not really an auction. I guess that's more of a marketing term that we use. It's not an open process like eBay where you know what the other person is bidding. It's a sealed process, and only really the license holders will know what bids they received and the number and how much and everything like that. So first bids are due by 11 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, November 2nd, so next Thursday. Once we receive the first bids, we'll run our financial analysis and present the bids to the license holders. From there, the process is in their hands. They can ask for another round of bidding, accept an offer, or reject all the offers. It would be entirely up to them how they like to proceed. We'll obviously try and facilitate the transactions and move it along, but it's ultimately going to be up to them, whether or not they accept an offer or not. To date, we've actually closed 182 transactions as a result of this process, and many more actually in the negotiation phase. We've actually had over 120 bidders that have signed up. That resulted in more than 650 bids. The bids have ranged from less than 4 cents to greater than 20 cents per megahertz pop. And I'll get into all that, the valuation here in just a minute, because we're going to go over just a demonstration actually right now on how to value these licenses. So from our homepage, selectspectrum.com, what you'll want to do is if you click on the Spectrum Auctions right here in the middle, this will bring you to selectspectrum.com/SLA, or for Spectrum Lease Auction. This is where we have all the information about the auction. We typically have a summary, provide some kind of updates here. We have the map. This is important right here. We have all of the important forms that you'll need either to sign up for the auction or to actually help value the licenses and submit bids. So I'll be going over all that in a minute. And down here at the bottom, we have some old webinars that we've recorded. We'll actually post this one we'll update this one, upload this one as well. So if we scroll up to the top, what I think first we need to do is we need to get logged in. So if you scroll all the way up to the top, you'll see the login up here. I'm just going to actually open in a separate tab because I'm going to have to reference back to this page here shortly. But if you haven't already signed up for this, you need to do that in order to actually see the licenses available and submit the bid. So anyone that hasn't already signed up, I'd recommend that they do that as soon as possible. So we'll go ahead and get signed in. So after logging in, you'll have access to all the information on all the different licenses that will be included in the auction. So you'll have the call sign, the actual spectrum rights holder, so who's actually responsible for the license. You'll also see the channel over here, the megahertz, and of course the population and megahertz pop over here as well. And then there's just kind of where the licenses are and just kind of an example location. You'll notice 2 different shades of blue for licenses on your map, and they have 2 different meanings. The dark blue is what we call the committed licenses, and these are the license holders that have signed an agreement with us to market their license and are actively pursuing a sale or a lease. And the light blue are what we call the potentially available licenses. And basically what we've done is, according to the FCC records, they do not have a lease, or if they have a lease, it'll be expiring soon. So we've just went through ULS and figured out who had a lease or who, and if it would be expiring soon, and included those licenses in the auction. You can still place bids on these licenses, and we'll present them to the license holders. We've actually gotten a number of deals done this way, and basically the idea behind it is that, like I said, some of the schools don't necessarily know they have this asset, let alone what it's worth. So if we go to them and say, hey, we're in this competitive auction process, we had X, Y, and Z, bidders place a bid on your license, here's the offers that you got, that makes schools, which are typically risk adverse, maybe more likely to accept an offer and say that, wow, this is actually fair market value, this is what it's this is what the license is worth. So there's obviously a number of ways that you can go through and filter by licenses. You can scroll through, you can zoom in on the map. What I'm going to do is actually, you can go over here to the left and filter by state, and you can actually further filter by county if you want. So this brings up all of the licenses that are available in Kentucky. That's just the example state that I picked. I would like to point out that if you click on each individual call sign there and go up to the reports tab, there are three reports that I guess everyone should be aware of. So the first one is what we call a SIM, or the Spectrum Information Memorandum, which describes the market and may even include information from the license holder about what they're looking for in an offer. So they might say we're looking for a higher upfront payment, or shorter term lease, or just to increase their overall maximum value, whatever the case is. Not all license holders provide this information. Actually, a lot of them don't, but some do. So it's definitely worth looking at as far as just reviewing the market, see if the license holder is giving you any kind of inclination as far as to how they'd like to, what they're looking for in an offer. You obviously can submit any offer you want, but if they give you an idea what they're looking for, it might help you get a deal done. The second and third link will open up individual maps of the licenses. So these two right here, one's in portrait, the other one's in landscape that you could print if you wanted to. And the fourth link will actually bring you to the ULS page for each prospective call sign. And the ULS obviously has some additional information that you may not find on our site. So let's see. Oh, something else I should point out about this is, like I said, some operators may want the, 45 megahertz or additional spectrum depth available. And so one way to do that is sometimes you can just see readily available. So you can just see, right here, you'll see the circle, then you'll see the other polygons here that have a somewhat of an overlapping GSA, but it's not always that easy to tell. So one way to do it is if you right click, it'll bring up this little box, and that will show information about, or that'll show the call signs with at least some kind of partial overlapping GSA of some sort. So, and like I said, you can usually tell on the map, but not always, especially if they have identical GSAs, then it makes it really difficult to actually see it. So that's one other thing that we should point out. So that's kind of, the basics of how to navigate this, our secure auction site. So what I'd like to do now is actually go over an example of valuation. So the licenses are valued on a megahertz pop valuation, which is the population that the license covers multiplied by the bandwidth of the license. So for this particular example, I'm going to use W&D 366. The license is held by the Center for Kentucky Rural Development. And you'll want some information, from the site. The license covers 272,759 people, which you'll see over here, and is a total of 22.5 megahertz wide. So you'll need that information, and I'll show you where in just a second. So we're going to go back to the selectspectrum.com/SLA. And if you scroll down below the map, you'll come to the all the forms and stuff as well. So what you'll want to open up is the Lease Net Present Value Calculator spreadsheet. So you can just download that and open it. And basically from there, what you'll want to do is, this is designed to help people create bids and just kind of value the licenses. And the green cells are what you should be providing, or this information comes from the secure auction site. So in cell E5, you're going to put in the 22.5, which is actually the default for the megahertz. And then what's that cell I5 is where you're actually going to put in the population. So for that particular example, it was 272,759. And then from there, right below the population, cell I6, you'll see the price proposal. This is where you're actually going to put in that dollars per megahertz pop valuation. Now our guideline, our rule of thumb, is 4 cents per megahertz pop for a rural license. And obviously more urban licenses will demand a higher valuation. Obviously offers will vary based on whether bidders think it'll be competitive, along with other factors. We really just encourage bidders to submit offers that they think are fair. So, you're going to be entering into a long-term deal with the school, and that you actually think will be accepted by the license holder. You want it to be attractive for them as well. So at the initial 4 cents per megahertz pop offer, you'll see over here in this orange cell, it's at L9. just according to our kind of standard template, we'll go over how you can adjust this here shortly. It's the default upfront payment is $24,548. And then you'll see over here, it's all E8 and E9. The initial monthly rent is $1,422. That would increase by 3% each year. So there's a million different ways to actually get to the 4-cent valuation. This is just one of them, and this is kind of our just default spreadsheet that we use. Okay, yeah, so I want to go over, so the spreadsheet can actually be manipulated to reflect different bids. Let's just say you thought this license is not really rural, and you're gonna, in this particular scenario, is gonna be competitive, so you wanted to submit a higher offer. You could go up here to the price proposal and just say put in a nickel instead of the 4 cents, and the spreadsheet would adjust automatically. So what's that? Just over $30,000 as the upfront payment, and almost $1,800 for the monthly payments, with still the 3% increase. So we'll go back to the 4 cents, and I will show you the other ways that you can adjust this. So these orange cells can be adjusted as well. So let's just say you wanted round numbers. You could change the upfront payment to $25,000 as opposed to the 24 and some change. And you could adjust the monthly rent to just say $1,500, and maybe you only wanted 2.5% annual increase. So you could change this in a variety of different ways and get to, you know, a bunch of different you could get to, you know, the same conclusion at a bunch of different ways. If you wanted to actually reverse engineer the megahertz pop, so since we just changed that up, you would actually do the net present value, which is this yellow cell right here, divided by the megahertz pop. So, okay, it's still 4 cents actually at the new adjustment as well. But basically, I think, you know, I want everyone to really just know that it's just the spreadsheet's just a tool, can really be used to it's just a guide to assist in creating bids. You can really do it a number of different ways. I just changed it as you saw, and you know, still came up with the 4 cent valuation. So you should notice that. Oh, also this down here right below is the amortization schedule. So you'll see that under this proposal you would pay just under $815,000 over the full 30-year lease. So, but once you have the financial aspects of your bid, you'll actually want to go back to the SLA page, so selectspectrum.com/SLA, to download the standard bid form. It's in the same area as the lease net present value spreadsheet, right underneath the map. You'll see it's a standard bid form right here. So you'll actually want to download that, and I actually already created one just for the purpose of this example. So it's pretty intuitive. It's, you know, easy to do. The first page is just, you know, who you are, who should we be contacting regarding the bids, and then the contact information. It's all pretty straightforward as far as filling this out. It's just an editable PDF. The second page, you're actually going to put the call sign that you're actually going to bid on, and number 12 here. What I would ask is to create a separate bid form for each separate organization. So if the organization only holds one call sign, to create one bid form. But if maybe the organization holds 2 or 3 or 4 and you're going to submit the same offer for them, you could include that down here, number 13, the additional call signs. And that's just to make it not as confusing when we're actually talking to the license holders. If you're going to offer to purchase this, you could do that here. So that would actually only be for the BRS licenses, because as I said earlier, the EBS licenses have to be leased. And you're going to put in the earliest and latest effective date. Like I said, the schools can be slow to make any decisions. I would recommend building a buffer in. For this particular case, you know, I just put in a little over a year, but ultimately that'll be up to, you know, each individual bidder. And then right below that, you're going to put in the initial term and the maximum term. Like I said, the FCC has a maximum term of 30 years. And most of the time, the initial term, most attorneys will tell you to have that coincide whenever the license needs to be renewed. So you could put in 5 years, 10 years, or just put in, at license renewal, just so that way you ensure that it gets renewed. And then on the third page, you're actually going to put the financial aspects of the bid. So if you'll recall, at the 4 cents per megahertz pop, using our standard one before I edited it, we had an upfront payment of $24,548, which would go in 19, and then 20 was the initial monthly payment. So you'd come over here and check monthly. If you want to do monthly, you could do quarterly, annually, whatever you'd like to do. But that was $1,422. That would increase by 3% each year. Right below that, we include something where, let's just say you wanted to have some kind of special payment option or schedule where, it wasn't, I guess, readily available in that spreadsheet. I don't know, something like you're going to have a lower upfront payment, but year 3, after you're up and operating, you're going to kind of make a balloon payment to make up for that, the lower upfront costs. So you could include information there, and that way we'll take that into account, and the license holder will see that as well. And then at the bottom of the page is actually where you're going to put the information about the free service credits and free accounts that I was mentioning, to where to keep the 5% reserve capacity for educational use. So you just put in a certain, however many free connections or service credits you plan on offering, and go from there. Then on the last page, it's really just, there's a couple different options here, but you really just want to put any basic information about you, your company. Maybe you participate in, charitable activities in the community, and you want them to know about that, or maybe what your plans are for the license. Really anything that you think may help sway the license holder to, potentially accept your offer over the other. You can put that down here on the last page. So obviously you'll want to save that to your computer, and then after you're done, you will actually go back to the secure auction site. So you'd log in again, but I'm still logged in, and you would go up here to the green place a bid, and if you click on that, you can upload the file and give it a name. We actually recommend using the call sign and your company name. It just helps it make it a little bit easier for you to keep track of, and us as well. If you are having trouble with this, you can email the bids to bids@selectspectrum.com as well. I think that is primarily it. So that's kind of that's how you value the licenses, how our process works, kind of what to expect, and how to submit the bid. So like I said, you can do it via the bids@selectspectrum.com, or you can upload them to this site. So now I can take any questions you might have. If anyone has any, if you come up with something later, you're more than welcome to contact me. My information's on the screen. And like I said, just a reminder, and I'll send out an email next week as well, that the first bids are due by 11 p.m. on November 2nd, 11 p.m. Eastern on November 2nd. The site will actually, cut off, and you won't be able to submit bids after 11. And you could actually, we'll actually accept bids anytime between now and 11 p.m. Eastern on November 2nd. And if you wanted to actually submit a test bid, you could do that as well. I would just ask that when you go to upload it, you just include the word test of some sort, just so that we know it's a test bid and we don't treat it as a real bid. And like I said, if anyone has any questions, they can type them into the chat box now, or they can contact me separately. And so far, it does not look like we have any questions. I know a lot of people have participated in these before that are on the webinar, so I'm not sure if that's really a big surprise. But if there's not any questions, I think I will thank everyone for attending. And like I said, if you have any questions between now and November 2nd, feel free to contact me. Typically, it takes about a week to run our analysis and submit the bid to the license holders, and then largely, like I said, it'll be up to them what they're going to do as far as accept the offer, reject the offer, and but you know, we try and provide periodic updates and everything. And actually, so we actually do have a question. Can you tell me when the webinar will be posted? We typically try and do it. It all depends on the GoToWebinar. If sometimes it takes a little while to download, but it should be posted no later than tomorrow. And I can send out an email once it's posted as well. And we have the older version of the webinar on this SLA page down here. So it's the second webinar. This is an older version though. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time. And like I said, we will. I'll send out a reminder next week about the auction and bids being due. Thank you. Have a great day.